Hi, welcome back to Insidetraxs.co.uk. For those of you who don't know, Insidetraxs was set up 7 years ago. We have a website with lots of information that can give you an edge in your trading. We've done more than 110 videos, again, giving you some information which you may not know about trading and about horse racing in general. We also do a newsletter, which you can sign up for. We do 14 days free. We give trading tips and back delays, which make a profit. So go to Insidetraxs.co.uk and sign up there. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe if you want to see the new ones when they come out. So today we're going to look at racehorse trainers and the tricks of their trade. If you've been watching racehorse trainers for as long as I have, you'll realize that there are ways in which they can act to improve the chances of the horses they run for winning. And if you know what the tricks of the trade are and who's good at each, then you have a chance of identifying horses that are running under those trainers and the conditions and understanding when they think their horse is going to win, and therefore you will have that edge, which others don't. So what are these tricks of the trade? Well, give a bit of background first of all, quickly. 600 trainers in the UK, national hunt, dual purpose and flat. 391 are flat and dual purpose. So it's a lot of trainers, really, nearly 400 trainers out there. Some of them are very small, only 6 horses in training. That's Richard Price. Some very large, 281 horses in training. That's Andrew Balding. You've also got some owners that are very big. Godolphin Worldwide's got 1,000 horses, probably about 400 odd in training in the UK. Charlie Appleby has probably the bigger number of those on the side, but Sarur has the others. So big trainers, big horse race owners, as well as a lot of much smaller ones. Often the trainers are split into north and south, different bases. So generally speaking, if you go to a race in Yorkshire, you'll find the same trainers turn up there. Scotland, the same trainers turn up there. And when you come down south, again, trainers don't tend to send their horses long distances. And if they do, you should take note of that. That's one of the things that I'll mention later. Most trainers are independently run, so they own their own training facilities. Often they own their own horses or have shares in their own horses, which is quite unusual. Someone like Anthony Britton runs a lot of horses that he owns. So if he's paying the training fees and the travel costs and everything else, how on earth is he staying in business? And generally speaking, it's because he's fairly well aware of when a horse is going to win. Versus those trainers who have major benefactors. I mentioned one, which is Godolphin, and that's quite a nice place to be, because then you're just training to get winners, and in particular, trainers to get winners in training to get winners in big races. So that's the background. You've got there all sorts, but they've all got one thing in common: they're all trying to stay in business. And whilst those big trainers are staying in business by winning lots of prize money, those smaller trainers have to survive somehow, and normally it's through getting winners when at a time and a place that they know about, so they can make some money on the bets. So that's what we need to know. So what are the tricks of the trade? I'm going to go through them one by one. So getting a horse's mark down. The first way of getting a horse's mark down is right at the start. BHA normally gives an opening handicap mark to a horse that's run 3 times. So if you don't want to have a high mark, don't have your horse running well during those 3 races. And how do you not have it running well? You run it on too short a track normally, so over 7 or furlongs when it's a long distance horse, something like that. So you run it at the wrong distance, generally shorter than it should be at, so that it gets outpaced and sits at the back, never really has a chance of catching the winners. And so it's rather like putting Usain Bolt into Mo Farah into a race with Usain Bolt before they got a handicap mark. under the same weights over 5 furlongs, Usain Bolt will beat Mo Farah hands down. But if you then gave them a handicap and gave Usain Bolt 2 stone and told him to run over 800 meters against Mo Farah, then Mo Farah would win. So that's the way in which handicapping works. And so if you can get your mark down low to start with, then you start off your horse's racing career in a good place. So generally speaking, the first few runs of a horse's life, if it's going to go on to bigger and better things, it will win. If it's going to be a handicapper, then often trainers are looking to just give it a run and get a mark. And that's what they mean sometimes when you see beside the name of the horse, will do better in handicaps, is they're not trying in this one, by the way. So if you see that beside a horse's name, then don't back it, because it's not really trying. It's actually going for its mark. People are good at this. Those who are very good at getting the mark down are people like Sir Mark Prescott. He's a right character and tends to recruit into his stable horses which will be are bred to be 1 mile 4, 1 mile 6, 2 miles. He'll send them out into 6 furlong, 7 furlong, and 8 furlong races. For the first three races, they'll be 80 to 1, 100 to 1, 100 to 1, and then they'll get a very low mark, and he'll take them from being 8 furlongs to 1.5 miles for their handicap debut off a very low mark, and lo and behold, surprise, surprise, they'll win. So Mark Prescott, I've done a video on that, so you might want to look that one up. People like George Bowie have learned. He's a newcomer. Chris Wall's a very good one at doing this, and Charlie Fellows also is a youngster who's understood the benefit of getting a low mark for your initial handicap debutante, and allowing them to have a very good chance of winning a few. Those who don't seem to be able to do it is people like Brian Smart and Tom Dadscombe. They don't seem to concentrate in this area, and very rarely do they have horses that can get good low marks. They just tend to get the mark that they deserve. Horses running off a layoff. There's quite a few who are good at this. You will see horses coming in from a layoff, and you would often think, well, they must need the race, but because of some of the facilities that some of the trainers put in, they can get them really very fit, and so coming off a layoff isn't a problem. So whilst you're factoring that into your calculations for certain trainers, you should be factoring out. So, for instance, Luca Kamani, Huey Morrison, Emma Lavelle, all very good at getting one ready from a layoff. Whereas Tony Carroll, for instance, a lot of runners, he runs a lot of runners, and he runs them regularly, really, really regularly. So if one of his horses is on coming from a layoff, then he's not concentrating on that. He hasn't got the facilities to do that. He's concentrating on keeping his horses fit, and running them regularly. So he does. If there's one for a layoff, don't back Tony Carroll off a layoff. Similarly with Tim Easterby, he's a very traditional trainer. He trains his horses to run well in the summer. He doesn't run very many over the winter. So if they don't run over the winter, they're not going to keep fit. So they often need a first run, in the first few months of the flat season. So there you go. There's some immediate tips for you to say, if you see a Tim Easterby horse that's had 200 days off, give it a bit of a wide berth. Don't expect it to come out and win. It might do, but it's more than likely to need the run. A horse is running under a penalty. This is a bit of a knack. You need to be set up again to do this. So you get a horse, you get its mark down. So unlike the opening mark, what you'll often do is just run your horse in higher grade, on the wrong ground, on the wrong track, over the wrong distance. So you can. So if the horse's mark that you've got in your stable is too high, by doing that with handicap, it goes, oh, it was 8th out of 12, it was 10th out of 12, it was 12th out of 12. I'll knock its handicap down by a couple of pounds, So you run it in the wrong class, you run it over the wrong distance, you get the horses marked down, and then you unleash him on the correct race. And because he's got a much lower mark, he probably wins the first one quite easily. And within 11 days, you can then run. It depends when the win was, but up to 11 days, you can then run your horse with a penalty rather than taking the handicapper's new mark. So run it under the penalty because you've made sure that it's from a very low mark already. It'll win under the penalty. Then you put it into, say, a handicap which is an apprentice handicap. And with apprentice handicaps, the horse can win without a penalty. So you often then see a trainer whose horse has done very, very little, 0.0079, had all of its handicap rating come down to a very what they call a workable area, and then they put them in the right race, right conditions, and they win. And then they turn them out for a penalty, and they win. And then turn them out into an apprentice race, and they win. So look out for those sorts of trainers. George Bowie, Stuart Williams, both good at doing that. Guys like Richard Guest, they just run them, and when their mark comes down, the mark comes down, and when it's come down far enough, they'll win, and then it'll go back up again, and they'll run them. And he doesn't really have a strategy for it. So Richard Guest, running under a penalty ain't that much use to him. He tends to look at the race and see whether it's the right race rather than looking for the easy races that he can run his horses under penalties under. So specialists at that, horses for courses. Again, you'll see that certain trainers have facilities at home which replicate the courses that their horses are going to be good at. So you've got one who's R. Michael Smith up at Ayr. His training facilities replicate Ayr racecourse, and so 80% of R. Michael Smith's winners are at Ayr. He doesn't win away from Ayr, very, very rarely. So, but when there's a race meeting at Ayr, look out for R. Michael Smith, because he's liable to have one, because he'll run 4 or 5 horses that day, and one of them pretty much will win. So look out for that. And there are others who have courses. Some courses are designed where that they go up first and then down. There are other courses where it goes down first and then up, and horses will like the different courses. And so you'll also see horses that just will, not because of the facilities at home, but just because of the way they like to run, also like courses. So you watch out for that particular angle as well. It's not something to do with trainers. It's got something to do with the actual horse. But the local facilities and the local racing and the way in which the facilities at home are based will often mean that a trainer will be very much more successful at one course or 2 courses and not so successful at other courses. So look out for trainers and how successful they are at different courses. Horses turned out quickly or to a specific target. Sometimes you'll get these trainers who will know the race that they want their horse to win. They're targeting their horse at that race. And so they'll have some prep races laid out for them. And whether that's then 2 days before or 1 day before, you can often find horses being turned out quickly. So the other day, horse at Brighton came 5th the afternoon, and then the following day in the evening won. And because it had been given a blow, it had been shown the race course, it had run well at a slightly different distance, and now it was being brought back a furlong and sent out the following day with the knowledge that that was how the horse likes to run. That's how the trainers trained him, and the target was to get the second race, not the first race. And that's what quite often happens with not just turned out quickly, but also very specific targets for horses to go for. And you'll see that again in the commentary against a horse, laid out for this one. So you'll see that has done very little, because all the preparation races where he has not really won or not been given a chance of winning are all set up for this specific race where he is expected to win. So those are the tricks of the trade. Overall, how different trainers think, how different trainers, what different mechanisms trainers can use, but also for specific races. So if you're looking at a specific race, you know, today or tomorrow, you can also look at some of the statistics. How does a trainer do in a certain month of the year? That is available on ATR. You can just click on the trainer and you can see the months when he does better. Is he an all-weather or a turf man? Mick Appleby is an all-weather man. He does really well on the all-weather, not so good on the turf. How do they do at certain courses? Every single trainer, you can look up their stats and you can see, are they good at different courses? Also different distances. You can see that as well if you look hard enough. How do they do under certain race conditions, maidens or handicaps? You know, are they good in a certain type of race, certain distance of race? For instance, Robert Cowell is a sprint man. He wins virtually all his races over 5 furlongs, a few over 6 furlongs, but very few over that over 6 furlongs, and he wins on the all-weather. He's particularly successful at Chelmsford. So you can see that there's a certain type of race even that a trainer will go for. Which jockeys are they most successful with? Some trainers use their stable jockeys, their apprentices. Some actually don't have a stable jockey or an apprentice. They just use what they call best available. And someone like Eve Johnson-Horton, who uses best available, when she has one that she really thinks is going to win, she'll go after Will Buick. And so when you see Will Buick being booked for an Eve Johnson-Horton horse, be aware that it's really trying. It's got a good chance. And is the horse traveling a long distance, particularly for a small race? So if you find a horse based in Newmarket is going up to Musselburgh for a Class 5 race, then be aware that, and if that's the only horse from the stable going all the way, then they're taking a 500-600 mile trip. Horse box, you know, traveling head lad, assistant. It's an expensive business to get a horse all the way up there just for it to come last. So it should be trying if it's going up a long distance like that, particularly just one or so of them. So what I'm trying to say is through this video is that every trainer is different, and you can profit by knowing what those differences are. And you're not going to see a Charlie Appleby trying to land a big gamble at Chepstow, because he's far too interested in winning the 2,000 guineas and the 1,000 guineas and the Derby and so on. And yet you will find Sir Mark Prescott sending out a handicap debutant at some far-flung shore in a class 5 or 6 under a handicap debutant going up three furlongs in trip and being bet on like it couldn't lose. So you will find that. So knowing it, understanding it, you will be able to prosper and have an edge over others who don't know what you know. I'm going to be setting up a trainer fax on the website. I've just started doing it. It's not going to be ready for another couple of months. So by the middle of 2023, I should have quite a few trainers up there showing you their strengths and weaknesses, so you could benefit from that information. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, tell anybody else about it. There are 110 others that you can benefit from free. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, please do. It's on the website. Just look up for the members newsletter, 40 days free, and the tips generally are quite profitable. Cheers. Bye.